Toxic people feed on drama, manipulation, and emotional chaos. They win by pulling you into endless arguments, guilt trips, and control games. But INFJs, they don't fight back in the way most expect. Instead, they outsmart toxic people quietly, strategically, and without ever raising their voice. That's what makes them so dangerous to manipulators. They win by refusing to play the game at all. In this video, we're uncovering 10 clever ways INFJs outsmart toxic people without fighting back. From using silence as a weapon, to setting invisible boundaries, to reflecting someone's hidden motives right back at them. Every point will show you how INFJs turn their quiet strength into a shield. Stick with me until the end, because the final point reveals the most devastating move INFJs make, the one that toxic people never see coming. And if you've ever been underestimated for your silence, you'll see why it's actually your greatest strength. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and drop a comment. Have you ever dealt with a toxic person in your life, and how did you handle it? Spotting emotional inconsistencies. One of the most powerful tools INFJs have against toxic people is their uncanny ability to spot emotional inconsistencies. While most people listen only to words, INFJs go deeper. They notice the subtle cracks between what someone says and the emotional energy behind it. If a toxic person claims they're fine, but their body language shows tension, or if they shower someone with compliments while radiating envy, an INFJ catches it instantly. This isn't just intuition, it's pattern recognition. INFJs are natural observers of tone, micro-expressions, and emotional energy shifts. They sense when something feels off long before anyone else notices. Toxic people rely on these contradictions slipping by unnoticed. They manipulate through charm, false praise, or guilt trips, but their emotional mask rarely holds up under INFJ scrutiny. What makes this ability so powerful is how quietly it works. INFJs don't usually call out the inconsistency right away. Instead, they file it away, adding it to a growing mental map of the toxic person's true nature. Over time, these small red flags form a clear picture of manipulation tactics and hidden motives. The impact is devastating for toxic people. They thrive when others take them at face value, but INFJs simply don't. When someone's words don't match their energy, INFJs stop giving them power. They may withdraw emotionally, set subtle boundaries, or prepare to walk away altogether. This creates frustration for manipulators who realize they can't get past the INFJ's quiet radar. In short, INFJs outsmart toxic people by seeing the truth others ignore. They don't just hear what's said, they feel what's unspoken. And once they sense that emotional inconsistency, the toxic person's game is already falling apart. Listening beyond the words. Toxic people often rely on clever wording, charm, or half-truths to get what they want. They expect others to take their statements at face value and rarely consider that someone might listen beneath the surface. But this is where INFJs quietly outsmart them. An INFJ doesn't just hear what's being said. Every word carries weight, and INFJs notice the subtle hesitations, the slips, the inconsistencies hidden in the delivery. A toxic person may insist, "I did this for you," but the INFJ hears the faint undertone of self-interest. Someone might say, "I don't care," but the INFJ picks up on the quiet bitterness beneath the words. These tiny signals are often lost on others, but not on an INFJ. Yeah. What makes this so powerful is their ability to connect these hidden cues with the bigger picture. They understand context, tone, and intent in a way that others overlook. For INFJs, words are never just words. They're a doorway into the emotional truth behind them. And toxic people who rely on manipulation find this terrifying, because no matter how carefully they craft their speech, INFJs can often hear the lie hiding underneath. Rather than confront immediately, INFJs usually let the truth sit quietly in their awareness. They'll continue listening, piecing together the real story from what's left unsaid. By the time a manipulator thinks they've pulled off their game, the INFJ already knows exactly what's going on. This ability flips the power dynamic. While toxic people think they're in control of the narrative, INFJs are actually the ones holding the truth. And when the time comes to act, whether by setting boundaries, withdrawing energy, or walking away, the toxic person is left blindsided. For an INFJ, listening beyond the words isn't just a skill, it's a survival tool. It's how they protect themselves from manipulation and outsmart toxic people without even lifting their voice. Trusting intuition over logic. Toxic people rely on logic traps. They craft excuses, twist facts, and create stories that seem reasonable on the surface. Most people fall for these because they focus only on what makes sense. But INFJs play the game differently. They trust their intuition even when the facts don't line up neatly. And that's where their quiet power lies. An INFJ's intuition isn't just a hunch, it's the result of absorbing countless microsignals, tone shifts, body language, timing, and emotional undercurrents. All these fragments of data come together in the background, creating an unshakable gut feeling. So when something feels off, even if logic says otherwise, the INFJ listens to that inner voice. Toxic people find this maddening because it means they can't hide behind clever arguments forever. A narcissist might present a flawless story, but the INFJ already feels the cracks beneath it. They may not confront immediately, but they quietly prepare, withdrawing trust, watching patterns, and waiting for the truth to surface. And it always does. This intuition also protects INFJs from second-guessing themselves too long. While others argue with their instincts, INFJs eventually learn to honor them as guidance. Time and again, they've seen their logical hunches proven right. It may not always be easy because intuition can feel like walking into the unknown, but it gives them a defense no manipulator can predict or control. The impact is powerful. Toxic people thrive on confusion, but INFJs cut through it with clarity that seems almost psychic. And because they don't need to explain their gut sense to anyone, they hold the advantage quietly. By the time others catch on, the INFJ already knows exactly what's happening. For INFJs, intuition isn't about being mystical, it's about survival. It's the unseen shield that keeps them one step ahead, outsmarting toxic people without needing to fight back. Observing micro behaviors. Toxic people thrive on the fact that most people don't notice the little things. They hide lies behind smooth words, fake smiles, or convincing excuses. But INFJs are different. They don't just listen to what's being said, they watch how it's being said. Every flicker in tone, every pause too long, every forced smile tells a story. And this is where INFJs quietly outsmart toxic people. Micro behaviors are those tiny details that most overlook. A slight change in eye contact, the nervous tapping of fingers, the defensive shift in posture. While others brush these off as nothing, INFJs piece them together into a pattern. They may not call it out immediately, but they mentally connect the dots until the bigger truth is impossible to ignore. For example, a manipulator might claim they're not angry, but their tightened jaw and clipped responses reveal otherwise. Or a narcissist may pretend to be supportive, yet their subtle smirk when others fail gives them away. INFJs don't miss these contradictions. They see beneath the surface long before toxic behavior becomes obvious to everyone else. What makes this skill even more powerful is the INFJ's patience. They don't need to jump to conclusions instantly. Instead, they watch over time, confirming their suspicions with repeated cues. This makes it almost impossible for manipulators to cover their track, because no one can control every tiny behavior all the time. The impact is devastating for toxic people. While they believe they're hiding their real intentions, the INFJ already knows. They may not confront them directly, but the shift is clear. Less trust, more distance, and eventually a silent cutoff. By simply observing, INFJs gain the advantage without saying a word. This ability to read micro behaviors is why INFJs seem almost psychic. They don't rely on grand gestures of truth. They decode the small, hidden signals others overlook, and it always exposes toxic people in the end. Gathering information in silence. One of the most underestimated weapons INFJs use against toxic people is silence. While most people rush to defend themselves or react emotionally, INFJs hold back. They let the manipulator talk, reveal, and expose themselves, all while quietly collecting information. This silence is not weakness, it's strategy. Toxic people expect resistance, arguments, or emotional explosions. When none of that comes, they get comfortable. They overshare, slip up, and reveal inconsistencies in their stories. And the INFJ? They're quietly filing away every detail. Every contradiction, every exaggerated claim, every manipulative tactic gets stored in their mental library. It's almost like a chess game. Toxic people think they're moving the pieces, but the INFJ is studying the board, anticipating moves long before they happen. The INFJ doesn't need to shout, argue, or prove themselves in the moment. Instead, they play the long game, ensuring that when they finally act, the truth is undeniable. For example, a narcissist might repeat the same excuse to different people, slightly changing the details each time. Most won't notice, but the INFJ will. They'll remember exactly what was said weeks ago and compare it to what's being said now. That silent memory becomes their proof even if they never say it out loud. This ability unnerves toxic people because it removes their greatest advantage, control of the narrative. They thrive on confusion and gaslighting, but INFJs dismantle that power simply by watching and waiting. Eventually, the manipulator realizes they're being outplayed, and by then, it's already too late. Gathering information in silence allows INFJs to stay 2 steps ahead without ever raising their voice. Toxic people don't even realize they've lost the game until the INFJ withdraws completely, armed with the knowledge that exposes everything, turning empathy into a shield. Most people assume empathy is a weakness, that if you feel too much for others, you'll be easy to manipulate. But INFJs flip that assumption on its head. Instead of letting empathy make them vulnerable, they learn to use it as a shield against toxic people. How? By understanding emotions so deeply, they can't be easily tricked by them. Manipulators thrive on guilt trips, pity plays, and emotional pressure. They count on people reacting instantly to a sob story or a burst of anger. But an INFJ, with their high emotional intelligence, sees the tactic behind the display. They recognize the difference between genuine pain and a performance meant to control them. This means guilt, one of the manipulator's strongest weapons, barely works on an INFJ. For example, if someone tries to say, "After everything I've done for you, you owe me," most people would bend out of guilt. But the INFJ notices the imbalance, understands the manipulation behind the words, and shields themselves instead of giving in. What makes this even more powerful is that INFJs don't usually fight back aggressively. They don't need to. Their calm recognition of the truth disarms manipulators more than anger ever could. By staying empathetic but refusing to be swayed, they expose the shallow tricks toxic people rely on. It's almost like emotional judo. They take the energy thrown at them, analyze it, and redirect it without being crushed by it. Where others feel trapped by emotional pressure, INFJs walk away with clarity, strength, and self-respect. Empathy doesn't weaken them. It becomes their shield, protecting them from manipulation while still allowing them to stay true to their compassionate nature. And for toxic people who expect to exploit kindness, that's the biggest shock of all. Setting invisible boundaries. One of the most underestimated strengths of INFJs is their ability to set boundaries without ever announcing them. Unlike others who declare, "Don't cross this line," INFJs quietly shift their energy, and suddenly people find themselves shut out without knowing exactly when it happened. This invisible boundary is powerful because it's not about walls you can see. It's about emotional detachment that can't be undone once it's set. Toxic people often push and test, assuming kindness equals weakness. At first, an INFJ may seem endlessly patient, compassionate, and forgiving, but beneath that patience, they're taking notes. They notice every manipulation attempt, every guilt trip, every little act of disrespect, and once the scales tip, the boundary silently locks in place. Here's the shocking part. INFJs don't need to fight or explain when they decide enough is enough. They simply stop giving you access to their deeper self. The conversations become shorter, the warmth fades, and the connection you once had feels like it was cut off at the source. To outsiders, it seems subtle, maybe even invisible, but to the person on the receiving end, it feels like being shut out of an entire world. These invisible boundaries work because they're permanent. Once an INFJ emotionally detaches, no apology or excuse can easily reopen that door. And unlike dramatic confrontations, which manipulators often thrive on, this quiet cutoff leaves them powerless. There's nothing to argue with, no scene to manipulate, just silence, distance, and the realization that they've lost access to something rare. This makes INFJs particularly hard to exploit. By setting boundaries you can't see but can absolutely feel, they protect their peace without wasting energy on endless fights. And when those boundaries go up, toxic people often don't even realize it until it's far too late. Flipping the script with calm logic. One of the most devastating ways INFJs outsmart toxic people is by flipping the entire script with calm logic. Manipulators thrive on chaos, drama, and emotional reactions. They bait, they provoke, and they twist words, all in the hope that you'll explode, defend yourself endlessly, or get trapped in their game. But INFJs don't take the bait. Instead, they respond with a level of calm that disarms and exposes the manipulator instantly. Here's how it works. When someone throws accusations, most people fight back emotionally, but an INFJ will calmly ask questions that highlight the cracks in the story. They don't argue, they dismantle. For example, if someone tries to guilt trip them with, "If you really cared, you'd do this for me," the INFJ won't yell or defend. They might simply respond, "If caring means ignoring my needs, why is your definition of love one-sided?" That one calm question flips the entire dynamic. This approach is powerful because it denies manipulators the reaction they're chasing. Without emotional fuel, their tactics collapse. The INFJ's calm logic forces them to face the absurdity of their own arguments. Suddenly, the manipulator looks unreasonable, while the INFJ looks unshakable. Even more unsettling, the INFJ does this without raising their voice or losing their composure. That quiet confidence unnerves toxic people because it takes away their control. They expect anger or guilt. Instead, they're met with calm truth that cuts deeper than any outburst ever could. By flipping the script, INFJs reveal the hidden weakness of manipulators. Their entire strategy depends on chaos, and when faced with calm, precise reasoning, that chaos doesn't stand a chance. The manipulator ends up exposed, powerless, and frustrated, while the INFJ walks away with dignity intact. Walking away without warning. One of the most shocking ways INFJs outsmart toxic people is by walking away without any explanation or warning. Unlike most people who argue, demand closure, or try to make others understand their side, INFJs don't waste their time or energy on people who have already shown their true colors. When an INFJ decides they've had enough, their silence becomes the final move. No debates, no second chances, no drawn-out ending, just absence. To the toxic person, this comes as a shock. They're used to controlling others with guilt, manipulation, or endless conflict. They thrive on keeping people emotionally hooked, even in unhealthy dynamics. But when an INFJ quietly disappears, the manipulator loses the very thing they crave most, an audience. Suddenly, there's no one to argue with, no one to guilt, no one to control. The game ends instantly, and the manipulator is left powerless. What makes this so powerful is the psychological weight of the silence. People expect confrontation, they don't expect vanishing. Without the chance to twist words or manipulate emotions, the toxic person is forced to sit with the void the INFJ leaves behind. It's unsettling because it doesn't follow the usual script. There's no fight to win, no apology to fake, no drama to drag out, just an empty space where the INFJ once was, and that emptiness speaks louder than any explanation could. For the INFJ, walking away without warning is not about cruelty. It's about self-preservation. They've already given chances, observed patterns, and felt the silent resentment building. By the time they leave, their decision is final. They don't need validation or closure, because closure, to an INFJ, isn't something someone else gives. It's something they create themselves by choosing peace over toxicity. And that's why this move leaves toxic people stunned. The INFJ doesn't just leave a relationship or situation, they leave behind a silence that haunts, a reminder that once their energy is withdrawn, it's gone forever. Transforming pain into growth. The final way INFJs outsmart toxic people is through their ability to transform pain into growth. Unlike most who get stuck in cycles of anger, revenge, or bitterness, INFJs quietly use every wound as fuel for transformation. They may feel the sting deeply. Betrayal, manipulation, or disrespect cuts them harder than most people. But instead of letting that pain define them, they take the lessons hidden within it and turn them into wisdom, resilience, and strength. Toxic people often expect their targets to stay broken, to remain stuck in the damage they caused, but INFJs have a way of proving the opposite. Every heartbreak becomes a lesson in boundaries. Every manipulation becomes a deeper insight into human behavior. Every betrayal sharpens their intuition, making them stronger and harder to fool the next time. In a way, the very people who tried to break them end up forging their armor. This transformation isn't loud or obvious. INFJs don't announce their healing to the world, nor do they need validation for their growth. Instead, they rebuild in silence. They reinvent themselves quietly, out of sight, and then reemerge stronger than ever. And by the time the toxic person notices, it's too late. The INFJ has already leveled up, moved forward, and become untouchable. The most haunting part for those who tried to hurt an INFJ is realizing they actually contributed to the INFJ's transformation. That their manipulation didn't destroy them, it refined them. That their cruelty didn't create weakness, it created strength. The INFJ becomes living proof that pain doesn't have to end in suffering. It can end in power. And that's the ultimate victory. The toxic person fades into the past, but the INFJ walks away with a stronger sense of self, deeper wisdom, and a life built on peace instead of chaos. By turning pain into growth, INFJs don't just survive toxic people, they transcend them. At the end of the day, INFJs don't need to fight, argue, or prove themselves to toxic people. Their strength lies in subtlety, patience, and a kind of quiet intelligence that most manipulators never see coming. They don't win through confrontation. They win by staying true to themselves, by setting boundaries, and by transforming every painful experience into wisdom. That's what makes INFJs so powerful. They don't just survive toxic people, they outgrow them. And once that happens, there's no going back. The very things that once hurt them become the tools that make them untouchable. So here's the question for you. Which of these INFJ strategies do you relate to the most? And which one do you think is the hardest to master? Drop your thoughts in the comments because your perspective might help someone else who's dealing with toxic people right now. And if this video spoke to you, don't forget to subscribe to Brainy One and hit the notification bell because we dive deep into the psychology of INFJs, Sigma males, and the hidden power of quiet minds every single week. Remember, your silence, your depth, and your resilience are not weaknesses. They're your greatest weapons.